Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Cartoon All Stars to the Rescue. So I don't know why I'm just kind of going through nostalgia lately via this channel more than anything else. Just kind of going back and looking at our past as either just cartoon watchers or just like kind of looking at a lot of stuff now through a different lens and all of a sudden saying like, man, like the stuff that they tried to like put together, like, man, looks like either very violent or just very like, what were they thinking? Like, man, like, I get that, like, especially this video could have some kind of scare tactic ability, but I don't know. I think if you were to like present this same kind of thing today to people, or kids really, like, I think a lot of them would just be confused. uh like, I think, yeah, this movie or whatever it is like sends a good message, like, believe me. I think it like tries to like use iconic figures that a lot of people would know about to just be like, oh man, hey, like, Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is telling me not to go and like and do marijuana, then I shouldn't. Or like, if you like any number of these random barrage of cartoon characters, which I honestly don't think that there is enough there, but I also feel like this is kind of a random scenario of things that I think like in a very warped way tries to get a message across, but like it also just goes about it in a very odd like way, an odd approach. Uh, but it's also like, to me, when looking at this, I can't help but chuckle. Like, there's some weird things going on here. Like, how would someone be able to afford a thing of marijuana by breaking into someone's piggy bank? That just seems odd to me. Plus, also, like, you really don't quite understand if, like, this is all of a sudden, like, a Toy Story kind of film, or, like, but yeah, so, like, we have some certain characters mixed in here that I'm kind of cool. Like, it's kind of cool that they teamed up, like, Alf and Garfield, and, Slimer and Michelangelo, and like you have like DuckTales, like the DuckTales, those guys, and you have like Muppet Babies, which I guess is a was a big thing during that time, but I guess they had to like come up with cartoon equivalents for all these characters to just kind of come in and kind of tell you what for. Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, that was barely used here. Uh, and so on and so forth. Like, we have like, I think for that time, also the Smurfs and Alvin and the Chipmunks. Uh, but yeah, we kind of have like, I guess, the who's who for that time. But I think there's also like some references that I think are kind of goofy, because like they reference like Leave It to Beaver in here, which I'm just like, okay, how would this be like a timeless reference for like someone to understand? It kind of feels like they're doing some stuff that probably a lot of kids are probably like, what does that even mean? Like, even during that time, probably they're like, I don't even know what this even means, because probably there's a lot of kids probably during this year or generation or whatever that probably didn't even know what Leave It to Beaver was. So, but yeah, like this movie is fun. Like, I would find it to be fun to just kind of watch it as a nostalgic thing. Just, but also like there is some kind of just sad moments where we start to see Corey, who is to just want to like take care of her older brother and try to get him off the path of going into much more harder drugs, I guess. And so, but yeah, like there's some cool like spot of moments, but then there's also this Willy Wonka of a ride where like Michael is to go through this bizarre fun house and it's weird. Uh, but I think I'm gonna save a bulk of that for the like this spoiler things of it. So Because I think I'll get into that here shortly. Because this is like almost like 30 minutes worth of like content. So more than likely, I'll just be like, yeah, we're gonna probably have to wrap this up pretty soon and make this just a short little nostalgic trip, just because of how just um, odd and goofy that this movie was. We have the villain in this movie, I believe, who is called Smoke. And so I thought that that character was kind of like a genie-esque, kind of goofy kind of character. Like, it would be interesting, because I wonder if they ever, like, updated this, or they ever did, like, a different variation of this kind of thing, where there is kind of like a thing trying to prevent kids from like any other kinds of like substances or whatever. Uh, but I think also there's probably some YouTubers that probably got really creative and are like animators that probably maybe did like an updated version, or maybe they did some kind of thing that is to just send a kid's message to avoid uh, like some other kind of thing, like maybe Cove or the new normal, let's just say, to avoid the actual word. Uh, or maybe all kinds of stuff. Like I think they could have done something like that to help like kids try to understand like what is the new thing to try to avoid to protect themselves and whatever. But so with that said, let's go into this double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this thing, and let's go out of our way to say that it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you get to spoil this movie or this. Like I'm like it seems like this could be like a TV, like whatever kind. I don't know. Like I'm just gonna say it's a movie. Oh, by the way, where could you go out of your way to find this? Well, like I just went on YouTube. I just rewatched it on YouTube. Like it seems like there are some people that had like some like goofy copy of this that eventually went on to eventually go on YouTube. So I just watched it there, just kind of as a nostalgic thing. People might not get the best like version of this, but like it's really hard to kind of get this. Uh, but if you can find it, if you can watch it, just enjoy it for a nostalgic kind of factor. Especially because a lot of people who probably saw this originally are probably very much older now. Because I remember watching this and I'm just like, okay, like this looks cool, but I don't think I understood what the whole thing of it was. Like when I was a kid, I was just I'm never gonna do like anything. Like I'm never gonna be like a guy that's gonna be having to be like peer pressured into anything. Like that was never going to happen for me. And like how like they kind of like really beat into you, uh, like metaphorically speaking, like all about like, hey kids, stay away from drugs, dare, and all these things, and like they like did all these PSA announcements and all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, I ain't gonna even get anywhere close to just like going and smoking any weed or whatever. Like that's not the way I'm gonna head into my life, anyways. Like, and plus also like me personally, I'm like, dude, freaking like I get sick just purely off of things like I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. So I'm just like I'm not even going to try to do anything else because like I would have to even just avoid like cigarette smoke because I'll get sick because of that. So it's just like I would never go out of my way to try anything else. So like to me this is just a waste of time for them to beat into you like, hey, like smoking will really kill you. It's like, well, yeah, because I'm freaking allergic, so I can't. Like, plus also, it's just like I would like because I'm honest. Like I would tell people like, dude, I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. I'm not gonna even try to do anything else. Like, and I don't think I ever was offered. So like it was just like, man, like all those things that they just like drill into you, like don't do it, like go, don't do any of that stuff. And it's like it was never going to be a part of my life anyways. Like I just don't get how like we had to like be like so like ingrained in this stuff to avoid it, but we also had to know everything about it also. like they had to tell us like everything about it. Like, hey, yeah, you want to know the chemical concoction of putting this whole thing together? I'm like, no, I'm not going to be doing Breaking Bad anytime soon, because it seems like that's how thoroughly like much interest that they had to like tell us like about this thing. And I'm like, why? Like, no one is ever gonna like, unless somebody goes out of their way to seek this out, like freaking where we are, it's just like, no, like this is it's not gonna happen. Like, I'm sorry, we're never gonna like become uh these dealers or wielders or whatever freaking they think that they are gonna think that we're gonna become. So they got to drill into the fact that, hey, avoid this. I don't know. Like, I think people are just like, I think kids are smarter nowadays. Well, like, I know there's certain generation of people that are smarter, but like, eventually we get to the point where we have a lot of kids that are like still like troubled youth. So we have to like give them the remembrance of these kind of messages. It's like, well, yeah, but the message is still coming across today, and it's good to like see that like people are remembering this and like reflecting on it, and blah blah blah, like as if they like were good kids like their whole life. So, anyways, so let's get into this. So, because I feel like I'm going to talk longer than the actual video was, so let's get into this quickly. So, we have a kid named Mike who is to desperately go and steal his sister Corey's piggy bank. And so that unlocks or unleashes all these cartoon characters to either come out of their picture frames or their music albums and decide that they need to go and find out who the piggy bank robber was. And so that leads everybody just coming out of the shadows, coming out of the woodwork. Slimer all of a sudden comes through this wall and is all of a sudden have this like bat signal of a light to showcase on the missing piggy bank. Once Corey is to be woken up by Kermit the Frog, who is bizarrely an alarm clock. And so like, and Pooh is also all of a sudden like sleeping on Corey's bed. And like the Smurfs are trying to wake Corey up by doing this whole like barrel of monkeys, like one like climbing on top of one another to try to like either try to get up Kermit or try to get up like Pooh or something to wake Corey. So Alf comes out of his picture frame and all of a sudden sees Garfield, and like Alf is like, hey, hey Garfield, come and help us out. And Garfield's like, I don't want to do it. Like, I hate Mondays. Like, so, like Alf is a take because like Garfield is bizarrely this lamp, and so like Alf takes the lamp piece off of Garfield and is like, hey, do you want to get eaten? And so like. And so Garfield's like, oh, I guess I'll work it. I'll help you guys out. Like, why not? Like, yeah, like maybe I'll go and find some lasagna while we go and do this. So everybody starts going out to eventually try to figure out where the missing piggy bank is. And so like we have like Alvin and the Chipmunks, like the Chipmunks, Simon and Theodore are eventually kind of peeking out, and then all of a sudden they have to like drag Alvin to help them like go and find this piggy bank thief, because Alvin just thinks that there's some another person that wants some autograph of his, and it's like, no, we're gonna help out, like figure out where this piggy bank is. So eventually Kermit, with him being an alarm clock, awakens Corey, and Slimer bat signals the bank being missing. And so like Corey's like, who took my bank? And so there's only a certain number of people in this home. And so all of a sudden there's like a spot where like we find out that it's Michael who is the one who stole the bank. And so eventually we have a bunch of these characters that are all underneath Michael's bed. And eventually it seems that the main reason why Michael wanted to get this money was to eventually afford weed or marijuana. And so we all of a sudden have like Michael kind of tossing this thing of marijuana under his bed, and then all of a sudden we have these like characters that open this thing up, this little container, and like Simon is like, I'm thinking this is marijuana. And I'm just like, oh my god, like this is like I shouldn't be laughing, but like there's some kind of delivery here where like it just feels just weird. And it shouldn't. So we have Michael who has this character called Smoke that is just like a monkey on his back, kind of telling him, yeah, like you're out of marijuana, so you need to get some new marijuana kind of thing. And so, like, that leads to eventually having Michael going to this arcade where he is to have all of his friends around with this new thing of weed that he had gotten from some dealer. And so what eventually happens is the cops are being called on this arcade. And so all of a sudden that's when Michael's like, oh, I gotta run out of here because I don't want to I don't want to be the guy caught. And so all of a sudden we have Smoke who decides like, yeah, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. And so all of a sudden we have bizarrely Michael who is up against this brick wall that at the very top of it has barbed wire. Why? Like, why is there barbed wire at the top of this fence? And why would any common street of brick wall have barbed wire at the top of it? Like, is like there a prison right next to the spot where Michael's at? Like, how dangerous are these streets? So all of a sudden we have this cop just walking as a shadow, and so all of a sudden, like, Michael is like, oh my god, I'm never gonna do this again. They're like, oh no, please. Like, don't arrest me, Mr. Kappa. And so all of a sudden we see that instead of this actually being a cop, it's actually Bugs Bunny who's wearing like some goofy like mailman or police like hat. And so all of a sudden Smoke is just like, wait a minute, like, that's not a police officer, that's just Bugs Bunny, he's just some cartoon. And Bugs Bunny is like, well, hey, like, to each their own, their buddy, like, frickin' everybody's a cartoon in this thing. So, Bugs Bunny tries to throw Smoke in this trash bag, and then all of a sudden Bugs Bunny takes Michael into this time machine to eventually, like, I guess the very first time that he was to ever, like, be, like, peer pressured into smoking marijuana. So, smoking that weed, smoking that whatever stuff, the drugs, the horrible, horrible drugs, the horrible, just, like, they start to even, like, talk about crack a little bit in this episode, and they start to talk about, like, you would think like they would have updated this and it would have been like, hey kids, don't do heroin, or don't do don't do like any number of things that are just much more expedient or whatever, much more like hey, you're going to die once you do this drug. Because I think marijuana now like has become like one of those kind of like medication kind of drugs for some people, or a certain kind of weeds like relaxes people. And because some people have this like horrible stress factor that eventually weed just kind of is able to just kind of even them out, or just be able to just like have them chill out. Because guys like Kevin Smith is an avid like weed smoker, like Rob Van Dam from like former ECW and WWE, and like he's a weed smoker. and stuff like that. So like there is some iconic characters in certain kind of career paths or whatever that just take marijuana or weed as like a medicational thing, and it's not to uh it's not to try and ruin their health. It's just to be able to like calm themselves down, especially when you're under heavy amounts of stress. Like, and there's certain kind of different variations of weed that aren't as like um health taking or whichever. So uh not to say that you should like everybody smoke weed now. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like there's different kinds of weed out there now that I think people should realize that like this thing is kind of outdated, but like also like it's basically like, hey, stay away from the gateway drugs. That's going to get you into harder stuff, is really what this message is trying to do, but it barely does. So eventually, Michael was to have this one guy who is to peer pressure Michael into doing weed. And so then Michael just eventually just got like peer pressured into this. And so all of a sudden, we just start having these weird, like Willy Wonka, bizarre things. And so eventually Michael is to be going on a skateboard in some part of this thing here, and like eventually he is supposedly being like spun out of control, where all of a sudden we end up having because I'm kind of like jumping around here, but like we'll get to the points of like all bits and pieces of this. And so eventually like the Muppet Babies are within Michael's mind and is like showing him what his brain looks like on drugs, and how like it looks like this weirdish like space adventure journey of a thing where it just does not make sense to me, where there's like lightning and stuff going on in the brain, and I just don't understand what any of this means. But it looks like I guess it looks bad, but I can't tell the difference really. Uh, so eventually, the Muppet Babies are to have like again, Trevor's to smoke up that weed, and all of a sudden we have the Muppet Babies who are like coughing on the smoke, and so like we start to see that Michael is starting to lose control of him being on this skateboard. And so Michael is desperately asking for anyone to help him. And so we also have a spot uh, where Michelangelo is to, oh, I think it's right after the whole like, let's get into this. So I think right after the Bugs Bunny thing, we eventually head to transition Michael into talking to Daffy Duck, how Daffy Duck is kind of telling him about his future and how eventually he will look at some point, and how like he'll look horrible. We also have like Alf, who ends up taking Michael through this like fun house to show him what he looks like, what he'll really look like, something like this, when he's to eventually continue going on his path of smoking weed. That his face will turn green and he'll just look like a zombie, obviously, because you'll obviously look like a zombie when eventually you just keep on smoking weed. Because yeah, that's like you're gonna basically just say brains all the time. You're just gonna like it feels like this character like goes from like having a bizarre mirror that doesn't exactly look like him, but like something that will look like him, and but he looks like a zombie, and they try to like overly exaggerate things like to a heavy degree. But like I guess they're like, oh no, it's sound, believe me, like eventually this will be what people will look like in the future if they can just continue to just smoke up all the time, just hoo hoo with the weed. That sounds awful. That sounds like I was eating something. I apologize. But yeah, so Alf is to show like bizarrely this kid in a funhouse mirror, and so eventually we get to a point where like Michael is just like put through this weird amusement park that kind of looks anything like a Hellraiser kind of movie, which just like for people that don't know what Hellraiser is, like believe me, like this thing is just kind of weird and disturbing and it makes no sense. It's like this just bizarrish, like all of a sudden we see Michael going through this one like throat of a thing, and eventually he gets like tossed this life preserver that looks like some like blood vessel or something, or some like blood part of your body or whatever. And like I know there's some kind of science being done here, but it's just getting blown over my head. Just be like, what the heck is this? What is this? What is this life preserver thing? What is all this stuff? Like, what is this bizarre amusement park that, like, freaking I honestly want to go to just because it looks weird? But I wouldn't tell people to go here because it would feel wrong. But man, like, freaking what an acid trip that somebody went into while putting this thing together. But anyways, so Michael is to try to run away from all this, and he lands into this sewer where all of a sudden we have Michelangelo that's gonna freaking like, hey kid, you just dug a hole for yourself, and like now you have to get out. Like, man, like Michelangelo, like, yeah, Michelangelo, yeah, Like we already have Slimer, who they kind of had to use like a little bit of like the Ghostbusters theme music when he came in. Now they have Michelangelo, who's giving this kid the real message. Yeah, man, you need to be excellent and get away from them drugs. And so we have all of a sudden Michelangelo, who's in the sewer, because technically, I guess metaphorically, this is where this kid's life is now that he's on drugs. He's in the sewer. Is that the metaphor we're going here? I don't know. But yeah, so Michelangelo is to tell this kid that he dug a hole for himself, a manhole for himself. Okay, so Michelangelo just like pulls the drain of the sewer, and then so Michael goes like a swirling it down. And so just have the metaphorical thing of like all of these like characters coming in that are actually like a lot of fan favorites, just going like, yeah, man, like you need to get out of this hole. Like, dude, how many people are actually on drugs while watching this thing? And they're just like, whoa, man, like I need to stop. Like, I'm seeing this and it's freaking me out. Like, Michelangelo's talking to me. Alpha's talking about Leave It to Beaver. And, like, freaking Simon and Theodore and Alvin. Or, like, everybody's here. What's going on? So, all of a sudden, eventually, we have Michael, who ends up falling off of his motorcycle to eventually just be laying on this grassy place saying, help me, someone help me. And so all of a sudden we have the DuckTales coming in, the ducks, and all of a sudden Michael is like, I'm seeing ducks now? And so now we bizarrely have the DuckTales coming in. I don't know from where, but they just came in because they're like, yeah, we gotta do something. We gotta tell this kid what's going on. So the DuckTales are telling Michael that there is plenty of number of ways that he could say no. And so then we get into this whole ordeal of a song where all of a sudden everybody's like, Kermit the Frog's like chiming in. He's like, yeah, you better say no, kid. You better say no. So there's a million number of ways to say no. No way, yes, no, by me. Like all these like goofy things to where like Alf is just kind of like holding Bugs Bunny's mouth, and all kinds of other kind of goofy-ish things. and like Michelangelo's chipping in, and everybody's like coming in. Like, I guess Slimer is not going to have much of any lines in this whole thing because he really can't say much of anything. I think during the time period that this was to be a thing, like, I think Slimer, you couldn't understand him anyways, so it was just like, but anyways, so they go into this whole like song and dance. And so what eventually is happening while Michael is going through this whole like weird bizarre Willy Wonka trip, uh we have Corey who is to like go with her parents, and all of a sudden we find that evidently the dad of this family all of a sudden is realizing that there's a couple of beers missing, and all of a sudden like the father just immediately goes to the daughter like, where were you last night? These are not for you. No, I'm assuming this dad is probably just one of those guys that probably drank all these beers and then didn't even realize that he drank all the beers. I'm assuming that's what happened. Like, I'm assuming that this guy got just so drunk last night that he probably was just like, you know what, I don't even remember me drinking beer last night. Who knows how many things of beer that I probably had. And so, like, and so this father just goes off and is like, well, yeah, this is kind of weird that all of a sudden beer is going missing. And then all of a sudden, like, we didn't confront Michael about that. Like, hey, like, yeah, marijuana sucks and all, bad for you, but wait, what about that beer? Like, did you have a beer also? Like, do we have to talk to you about you're not the age of having beer, son? Like, where was that talk in this video? All of a sudden, beer goes missing, and nobody cares about that. But like, they gotta go into a million ways to say no when like about marijuana. Like, where's the real parenting here? Like, come on, movie. Beer is missing. Like, there has to be a whole investigation about that. But no, like, a piggy bank goes missing because Michael breaks into it to go and like find a thing of marijuana. But if beer goes missing, nobody questions anybody. Nobody's like, I need to get to the bottom of this. And so Pooh is like telling Corey, he's like, why didn't you tell your parents about Michael? Maybe he needs help. Maybe your parents will help you. And so Corey's like, I don't know, like, 'cause he's my brother, and like, I should just like, maybe I can help him. And Pooh's like, I don't think so, kid. You're just so. But eventually Corey goes and finds Michael's stash, and she's almost deciding to go and start to do marijuana, because maybe like that's the reason why her and her older brother could relate. And Pooh is like, no, don't do that, kid. You're too young. Like, it'll seep into you too quickly, and then you'll just never kick the habit, kid. And we have, like, Smoke, who's, like, telling Corey, like, yeah. Like, he's the Kool-Aid man. He's not the Kool-Aid man, but that's the only way that I could differentiate these voices. And, like, Smoke is like, yeah, do it, kid. Do it like your brother. And, like, no. So Michael freaking comes in, and he freaking takes the thing of weed and smacks it onto the floor, grabs Corey by the arm, and it's like, no, like, I was dumb. Like, I was a dope about doing marijuana, Corey, and, like you or I are never gonna do that again. Or ever, if you ever did do it, because, like, I don't know, like, I was on this Willy Wonka of a trip, and I don't know what happened, so, like, freaking Corey, don't do drugs. And so all of a sudden we have, bizarrely, Michael, who now can fling around Smoke like it's nothing, tossing it out onto this garbage dump, and, like, Smoke is like, I'll be back, kid, I'll be back. And so Michael's like, well, maybe he will be back. Maybe he will be. And so, like, all of a sudden we have, like, all of the, like, the cartoon posterish people, like, all gathered together on this one poster. and like Pooh is like who had gotten like chucked into this one cabinet is like opening it up and getting back to the poster to I guess to say like, hey, if Smoke is to ever come back, I guess they'll be there. So like yeah, like in a nutshell, like that's this whole thing in a nutshell what all this was. There's probably a lot of stuff that I kind of just like rushed into or kind of in a roundabout way review this, but like this is a nostalgic thing, but I'm gonna get the heck out of here because I know how short this was, so I apologize how long this review was, but like I just wanted to just review this as a nostalgic thing, even though it probably took longer than the actual video itself. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.